Hi everyone. In our last video, we looked at a progression utilizing a concept that in Sanskrit is called pratipaksha bhavana, which means cultivating the opposite. The progression is from pathology or imbalance, disharmony, to health, balance, and harmony, to then potentially beyond that, but at the same time including that, to direct present moment intuitive guidance. A part of the larger work that I teach in meditation, spiritual inquiry, and even yoga, it's important to know that especially at the outset, before you have retrained your poor conditioning or deconstructed your assumptions and then reconstructed them or allowed them to be reconstructed for you by God or higher wisdom, deeper true self, etc. Before that's happened, at the outset, what you think you want or what you think you like, what you think you need, what you think you desire, what you think feels good even, most likely is either all the way or at least tainted by shadow or dysfunction to some degree. This is why, one, a guide, a competent guide, as well as some rules and guidelines are important to get you going in the right direction. This is also why I have a problem with the way a lot of New Age teachers, either of spirituality, meditation, or yoga, instruct or invite their students to listen to their body, for example, do what feels good, use your intuition, before adequately teaching the difference between pathology and intuition, without adequately getting you in touch with where you are right now, who you are as an immature, unevolved, unaware, blind version of yourself. Recognizing that where you are right now, even the parts that you think are true and healthy and balanced, to at least approach those with a bit of skepticism. It's not to say that they're all off, but it's a mixed bag at the beginning. So consider, for example, and this very much coincides with our conversation here, if the instruction for someone with an eating disorder, in order to get healthy, was just listen to your body, Eat whenever you want to, whatever you want to, and it'll eventually balance itself out. That would be absurd, right? The approach instead, appropriately, is put some restrictions on it. Here are some guidelines for better eating, for better lifestyle. And this goes across the board, not just food. That's simply an easy example. Yoga as well, which I won't get into now. I have a whole yoga course that you can take advantage of, even though in this Breatharian course I am going to be introducing you to yoga and inviting you to join me in the yoga that I teach as one of the practices, one of the fuels, the tools or techniques for nourishment. But there's a similar correlation there. If we're approaching yoga from a healing or therapeutic perspective, to not just say, follow your body, follow your bliss, do whatever feels good, because, for example, for a lot of people, it feels good to go around cracking their neck all day. But ask any chiropractor, any physical therapist, anybody in that field, and they'll tell you that's not good at all. It eventually backfires. It increases the chances of arthritis. Not to mention it doesn't even fix the problem. It's a temporary release that doesn't stick. But it feels good. So, you see what I'm saying? Just because it feels good doesn't mean that good feeling is an appropriate feedback response. Same as things that might trigger you or make you angry or hurt your feelings. And we're very much in this culture of wanting to be validated for what we're feeling and what we're thinking. And what I'm saying is not to invalidate. It's just that you can't always trust your thoughts and feelings. You can honor them. You can accept them. You can let them be. You cannot demonize them. Yes, you are validated. I can honor that you or that I am feeling a particular thing. And it doesn't feel good. But does that necessarily mean that that feedback response is appropriate? Not necessarily. So, to conclude what I'm saying right now with these examples, when you first start out on this journey, again with yoga, meditation, spiritual inquiry, and fasting and breatharianism, what feels good might not be good for you. And what doesn't feel good might be good for you. And we've gotten all confused and out of whack with that feedback response in our body due to poor conditioning, ego, fear, unresolved trauma, etc. Eventually, in this transcend and include fashion, we don't let go of health and wellness, balance and harmony, but to go straight from disharmony, dysfunction, imbalance, pathology, unawareness, unhealth, to trying to live only by present moment intuitive guidance is probably not going to work. Number one, you probably don't have an adequate connection with your true intuition. with your true compass. But also, it skips a step. It's important to find yourself well and as whole as possible, healed as possible. Then eventually, just like these other practices are a graduation from the old paradigm eating, they too can become a hindrance, or at least another burden or slave master, honestly. If you have to rely on these certain things to get energy, it's a subtle but profound. And in the Vedas, I believe, sattva, the word for peace or harmony, is called a golden chain. Interesting, huh? So it's golden, it's valuable, it's good, but it's still a chain. But you have to find peace and harmony before you can transcend it, because you also need to be able to have those tools to include in your present moment guidance, because in present moment direct one-to-one intuitive guidance you have to utilize what you've learned from the past. And if all you have to reference is poor conditioning, fear, ego, etc., then it's not going to work. But through studying, through experimenting, through stopping the freight train, getting it going in the right direction, through tuning into your real, true north compass, however you conceive of it, your guides or God or Holy Spirit or higher self, combined with your knowledge, combined with your mind, your brain, and your intuition and your instincts, all are working together, which may in fact eventually blow this whole thing out of the water. For example, Edgar Cayce, famous psychic healer, channeler back in the day. Someone would come to him sick, he would go into a trance and come out with an anecdote. Anecdote? Antidote. Whichever one means, antidote. Anecdote is a story. He would come with an antidote or remedy for their problem, and it would always be very unconventional, some kind of root or herb or plant or salve that they could get at the local store or have to go find in nature or whatever it was. And sometimes it was literally poison. At least so the person had been taught or conditioned, but it just so happened to be the exact thing that they needed for their ailment. And so they would either have to decide to trust and go for it, or never mind, it's not worth the risk because of their old belief system. And 10 out of 10 out of 10 out of 10 times when they listened to that instruction, even if it was poison, they would get better. Pretty interesting, huh? But that does not mean you get to just go start playing with fire from the beginning, because you might not actually be getting the correct information if you've not cleaned out all the other cobwebs and have a working knowledge of not only yourself, but also your patterns, and also some rules and guidelines and systems that I'm going to present to you today. eventually direct intuitive guidance might ask you to go against everything that you thought you knew about something. And at that point, you have to obey. Obey, by the way, don't misinterpret. It literally means listen. In the original languages, the root word for obedience is listening. You must listen when you get that message, but it's very careless and irresponsible to not get in tune with all the different possibilities that it could be, so that you know when it's, we'll just use an old paradigm language, when it's the devil whispering in your ear or when it's the angel whispering in your ear. It's hard to tell sometimes until you get that rebalanced, to get that fine-tuned in the communication and listening. So that's for a more advanced level. For now, I want you to begin thinking and begin planning and begin acting to rebalance the pathology. In later videos, as I've said, I'm going to give you a few different options before it gets to direct intuitive guidance for what to eat when you eat. At this point, along the progression of videos, you're not yet ready to begin experimenting with a lot of fasting or even breatharianism. I'm still priming the pump and giving you cognitive support so that you can then utilize that when you begin experimenting and playing with it a little bit. As you can see, it's a much broader picture for me. It's about true transformation of consciousness, true self-inquiry, true healing, and truly getting to know yourself. The fasting, the feasting, the breatharianing, and all those other practices are just kind of one avenue of that, one avenue to that. That's really what's most important to me, and the other things just fall into place. That's why it did spontaneously occur for me, because of all the other work that I had done. This was just the natural next level that was presented on my path. So eventually, you get direct intuitive guidance for what to eat, how much to eat, when to eat, without planning. You can plan little fasts here and there. I'm going to go for the next few days doing X, Y, and Z, or whatever. That's fine, but even then, you might get an intuitive hit to change that. But before you have disciplined yourself, that quote-unquote present moment audible or intuitive hit might actually be just the ego or the Beelzebub, which we'll talk about later too, feeling that insatiable urge to eat, disguising itself as present moment intuitive guidance, when actually discipline would have been most necessary, especially if discipline is something you know you need to work on in that pratipaksha bhavana kind of sense. Then most likely, if before you have gotten really in touch with that intuitive one-to-one direct guidance, then any message or inclination during a period that you have planned to fast that says, present moment, change of plans, time to eat today, you will probably want to be a little skeptical about that. But in any case, eventually, direct communication from your body, not just from cravings, not just because it's time to eat, not just because other people are eating, and also not just because it's within a certain dietary or nutrition principle framework. I want to teach you a few of those options to choose from, what to eat when you eat. Then eventually, direct present moment intuition, which For me, even, I'll tell my story another time, how it all happened for me. But after my first 21 days of not eating, I got the clear, direct message, today, eat oatmeal. And actually, oats had been on my list of allergens. But it was clear and obvious that the body wanted oatmeal. Now, I still have some other allergens that are like dangerous, anaphylactic, hospitalization kind of thing that I've not fully tested out. That's also for another story, another time, because I do have reason to believe that they too have diminished, but I've not blatantly eaten those foods and tested it out. I am quite curious, but I can share a story at another time why I believe that it's also been diminished. But in any case, oats were not anaphylactic, but I was allergic to them, digestively and skin breakouts and stuff like that. But on that day 21, which I didn't even plan, very intuitively eat oatmeal. And guess what? It was fine. So it broke a rule in the present moment, but I had already rebalanced myself in order to obey or listen to that guidance and it not have a karmic kickback. Pretty cool. Who's laughing at me? Comes with having such an amazing mustache. Or just the fact that I go way too long without trimming it above my lip. So, I'm going to give you some options in another video for what and how to eat when you eat. For today, I'd like to give you a couple of systems that you can utilize, and I want you to utilize, to pratipaksha bhavana and get the train stopped and going in the right direction. Those systems are the Enneagram and Ayurveda. Ayurveda just so happens to be a nutrition and dietary lifestyle system. In fact, it's called the sister science of yoga because it's just as ancient and from the same location, area, India. But not only is it a nutrition and diet option, which is actually one of the ones I'm going to give you as an option to eat Ayurvedically, but another reason that I like it a lot is because built into it is the practice of pratipaksha bhavana. Same as the Enneagram. All of these other systems, there might be a component in their original intention and teaching of cultivating the opposite, but the way they're typically used these days is actually to bolster your over-identification or bolster your pathology anyway. When you find out what you are in a certain other astrological system, or you know that you're a Capricorn or a Virgo or whatever it is, and that's just the way Capricorns and Virgos are, and that's just how I am, and it perpetuates suffering and bad patterns. I don't know a lot about that system. Human design is another one that I know a bit about and can say there's a stamp of approval. You can check that one out if it resonates with you, but I don't believe that there's as strong of a pratipaksha bhavana component in it, which is why the Enneagram and Ayurveda are my top two go-tos that have really changed my life on all the kosha layers: physically, energetically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. For real. But then, like I said, it doesn't have to be pratipaksha bhavana forever. It doesn't have to be going against the grain forever. Eventually it's going with the grain because you're going in the right direction. And then occasionally using that as kind of your new groove or your fallback, your go-to, occasionally you'll be asked in the present moment to maybe break one of those rules for some reason. You don't know why, but you know you have to listen. And it always pays off if it's that voice, but you have to know how to listen for that voice or that feeling. If you haven't already, I'm going to include my 2-part video series on the Enneagram, and I would like for you to watch those videos after this one. Even if you've watched them, be nice to have a refresher. I'm also going to include another 4-part video series talk on the Enneagram by Richard Rohr, who's my primary source that I learned it from. But you don't have to watch those. Also for Ayurveda, my go-to soy sauce, my go-to source is joyfulbelly.com. It's a guy named John Immel and his team in Asheville, North Carolina. And I've worked with him. I've known him for over 10 years now. His workshops really changed my life back when I was first introduced to Ayurveda in 2010, I believe. And I've done a couple of cleanses with him along the way. And in fact, at the time that I'm recording this, I'm planning to embark on a 2-year Ayurvedic certification course with him beginning this fall. We'll see how that goes. That's the plan. So joyfulbelly.com I highly recommend as a resource. Even working with John, he does consultations on the phone to get you eating in the right direction. Joyfulbelly.com also has a lot of educational resources and recipes. I go to it all the time, and each recipe tells you if it's appropriate or not for your dosha, which is your type. Let's start with Enneagram really quick because I want to move through it fastly. I'm not going to give a whole talk on it because I'm referring you to the other Enneagram videos in the folder that I've already made. One of the things that I'm intellectually interested in, and experientially too, of course, but I've not been able to accumulate enough people to do kind of like a case study on it, but I am interested in a research project, if you will, to analyze the overlap and we'll say, probability of different types in different systems resonating with each other. Remember I said it's highly, highly, highly unique and customized, your type, because, for example, not every Cancer, I'll just use me for an example. Cancer, manifesting generator in human design system, Kapha Pitta in Ayurveda, 9 on the Enneagram, Tiger in the Chinese astrology system. Not to mention all of that, because that doesn't just pigeonhole you in. Maybe there's somebody else on the planet that's Cancer, Tiger, Kapha Pitta, 9, whatever the ones. Kapha Pitta, Cancer, manifesting generator. Maybe there's someone else on the planet with those types in those systems, and you can fill in the blank with any other ones that you like to work with. But we're still not going to be exactly the same. They're not my twin, they're not my clone, because we have past lives in which we were other things. We have how long we've been a soul reincarnating, the so-called old soul, new soul paradigm. We have certain interests, the culture we were raised in, because that other person wouldn't have been born on the same day, the same location, same time, and raised in the same family as I was, with the same kind of calling and passion and career and experiences. So it's still highly unique, which is where the present moment comes in. Because whatever type you are in the different systems, you are going to experience everything, but specifically to our conversation here, feasting, fasting, and breatharianism, and also depending on your trauma, your karma, your samskara, differently, very, very differently, and your prescription for how to practice it is going to be very different depending on those things, and then present moment intuitive guidance. So, for example, in the Enneagram, they have head types, heart types, and gut types. If you don't know how to make good decisions, for example, or if you historically haven't made good decisions, maybe you're not in touch with your appropriate decision-making center. So if you're a head type in the Enneagram, you make your best decisions through thinking it through, analyzing it, and being calculated. If you're a heart type, you make your best decisions when you're feeling it out. How does it make me feel? What are my emotions around this versus this when I'm choosing? Again, both of those can get tricky. If you don't have your analytical brain online, if you don't have your emotions in check, you still might make the wrong decision. But still, you make your best decisions once your brain has come into alignment, once your heart has come into alignment. And then there are a third type on the Enneagram, the gut type. Gut types make their best decisions when they feel it in their gut. It's just a direct knowing. Yes. And there's overlap from those types into the human design system as well. The human design has a whole discussion about how to make decisions based on your unique design. So that's just one example. Something else that I'm intellectually interested in doing a research project one day, and then of course figuring out the application of it. Not only the high customization, but also, and how a couple of people with those same makeups might interact or be the same or different, or have different direct intuitive communication and guidance, but also what are the chances? What's the probability that nines are also kaphas, for example, because nines tend to be slothful and lazy, and so do kaphas, which is interesting. So there's kind of a similar prescription for both of those for me. Not every nine is a kapha. Not every nine kapha is a Cancer. For example, if I were a Sagittarius with 9 Enneagram and kapha dosha in Ayurveda, that would change a lot. Or if you're a Pitta in Ayurveda, fire, and also a fire sign, Sagittarius, for example, in standard traditional astrology, whatever you call that system, then that's a lot of fire. So the invitation, the pratipaksha bhavana, is going to be a double whammy on that as well, just like my nineness and my kaphaness both tend towards laziness or lethargy or heaviness. You see where I'm going? Not every manifesting generator. And gender, sex and gender, I do believe matters as well. I know we're in a very sensitive time where there's some political correctness going on with that. And there's a lot of gray area that I honor for sure. Masculine and feminine, male, female, everything in between, which is for another conversation altogether. But not every 9 male kapha, manifesting generator, tiger, etc. is a male. That's my age. So I'm very interested in that specificity. It seems to be a nice, worthwhile study. But in any case, I promote very strongly Enneagram and Ayurveda because of its pratipaksha bhavana and truly transformative components. If you choose another one, make sure that it's one that doesn't just lock you in and allow you to perpetuate your bad patterns, but breaks you out in a truly transformative and healing way. In fact, in Ayurveda, there's a concept that's similar to what I'm saying here. And that is, until you have balanced out your dosha or balanced out your pathology, you can't then eat more specifically for the season and geographical location and climate. Ayurveda gets very detailed on flavors and tastes and season and location, latitude, longitude, all of that kind of stuff. But I was told by John Immel of Joyful Belly back when I was working with him at the beginning when we first met, I was told, don't worry about all of those fine-tuned details until you get your kapha under control. And kapha is earth, tends to put on weight easily, slow digestion, and different qualities and characteristics too. But because I have gotten it all under control, to the untrained eye, you probably wouldn't be able to tell that I'm a kapha because I've gotten it well under control. However, I do still have tendencies energetically of a kapha. As a 9 on the Enneagram, which is also prone to lethargy, procrastination, laziness, the pratipaksha bhavana invitation is to move in the direction of the 3 on the Enneagram, and watch my videos, it'll make sense to you, which is more success-driven and achievement-oriented and self-propelled and motivated. So the fact that I have a lot of energy, vitality, and am pretty thin and balanced in my body shows you that I have gotten the train going in the other direction, and it would be difficult to recognize me as a Kapha 9. So that's pretty cool, which then allows me to graduate to the more present moment intuitive guidance, because the learning never ends. But for example, if, say, on the Enneagram, you are a type that tends toward rigid adherence to rules, then even within the guidelines and the rules of the suggestions of diet and nutrition for you to try out when you're eating, if that feeds the ego, thinking you're doing it better or somehow you're going to find happiness through strict adherence to rules without breaking out of it, being very OCD and kind of anal and rigid about it, then your pratipaksha bhavana for your Enneagram type is to relax a little bit. Yes, still follow the guidelines because that's important, but relax a little bit. Break a rule every now and then. And that will promote and contribute to your overall health and your overall transformation. It's not just about eating or not eating. Remember that. Or another one, for example, if in the Enneagram you tend to be a type that can't stick with the program, you quit things easily, flaky, which might also relate to your Ayurvedic dosha. You might be a vata, which is wind or air, so more flighty. If your Enneagram number and maybe your other astrology sign all conspires to make you kind of ungrounded and flighty and flaky and not stick to certain disciplines, then your strong pratipaksha bhavana invitation is going to be to really stick to the program, to really follow the rules. And that will rebalance. In addition, vata on the Ayurveda scale tends to not need much to eat anyway. Tends to be the ones that can actually already fast very easily. Tends to kind of just eat twigs and berries, nibble, nibble here and there. On the other hand, Kapha loves to eat. Major sweet tooth. Eat too much. Gain weight easily. So fasting is actually very appropriate. Fasting from feasting for Kaphas. And most likely, Kaphas have more reserves because Kapha has also kind of a slow and steady, long-distance stamina to their disposition. You can stick with things for a long period of time. So that works in our favor. We have fuel reserves, often in the form of fat, to go longer without eating. But that's even also in an older paradigm because eventually, like I said, it has nothing to do with calories or burning fat or anything like that. It's just prana. When I first did my first year of this, I actually went to a far extreme with it and lost a lot of weight. And a lot of people were projecting onto me that I was sick and weak and emaciated, when in fact inside I was very connected to source. I was very strong and grounded. I was going on long walks and hikes, and I was doing a lot of strong kind of acrobatic yoga, but I just looked frail. I didn't feel frail. I looked frail. Then during this second year, this past year of it, I'm still taking it pretty extreme, going multiple days in a row with nothing. But interestingly enough, I have filled back out to a very healthy, balanced looking body shape and size and tone. Because it's just prana. It's not because I'm eating a lot more. It's pretty similar actually as the first year. But if you could see my first year, you could see it was kind of skin and bones. My eyes were sunken in, very thin. You could see my ribs and my spine. But again, I wasn't sick. I was actually quite healthy and felt amazing. Now, existing mostly on prana, honestly, and I look like this. And I'm working out at the gym, and I'm working out in the yard, and chopping wood, and doing a lot of household chores. I'm not just Om Shanti meditating all day. I live a very active life, so I'm very balanced as a Kapha 9, all the other things. So, for example, if fasting, if you're a Vata, perhaps, if fasting is going to make you even more ungrounded, and you're already not balanced, you already don't have your Vata-ness under control, then the prerequisite, just like Ayurveda itself prescribes, is you have to get your dosha under control. Just like I gave the example in last video, once an addict, always an addict. Not true. Once an addict, always an addict if you're not doing this internal work. Alcoholics who can never be near alcohol again, or never take a sip of alcohol again, or never go to the bar again, is coming from a sick place, honestly. A responsible place, for sure, if you've not been totally healed, to discipline yourself not to drink anymore, not to go to a bar again, not to put yourself in those kind of situations, for sure, if you're still not well. And not partaking in that is better than partaking in that, obviously. But then eventually, once you're healed, if you still want to have a drink, still want to go to the bar, that should be no problem, because you have a brand new relationship with it, brand new control over it, and you've been transformed. That's just an example. I'm not saying anything about people who are addicts. I'm not recommending, as you've been hearing, I'm actually recommending that you take these very necessary steps. I'm telling you not to be careless. Then eventually, once you graduate to the advanced level, what looks careless, or what would otherwise be careless and irresponsible, actually is the best choice, sometimes, when that's the guidance. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty fun. See how liberating and how freeing this whole thing is. That's really what it's about. So, as I was saying, for a Vata, for example, if fasting, if you've not already rebalanced your Vata, and fasting is going to make you weak and shaky and even more flighty and flaky and ungrounded, then it's not a good idea to start yet. This is not to say Vatas can't fast or be a Breatharian. It's to say you have to get your Vata under control first. So to run through them really quickly, Kapha is earth energy. Pitta is fire energy. Vata is air energy. And they correlate very nicely with a more contemporary scheme. I forget all the different words, but it's like endomorph, ectomorph, mesomorph. I think I just remembered them all. But I don't remember which one is which. Ectomorph, endomorph, mesomorph, for those of you more familiar with that kind of anatomical delineation. But kapha, heavy, lethargic, low energy, slow digestion, easy to put on weight. Pitta, fiery, fast digestion and metabolism, very direct, get a lot of things done, focused, driven. And usually the body's shape, structure, and type is muscular, lean, not thick or thin, but right in the middle, well-defined. And then vata is air, and the body type is usually very, very, very thin, often kind of lanky and long. And again, don't already have the tendency to eat a lot. Very minimalist in a lot of ways. This is also about lifestyle. So there's prescription, which would be too much to go into right now. Prescription for when to go to bed, how much to sleep, how to do yoga, all different things. How to stay organized, what kind of house to live in, what kind of, all this stuff that, again, see, it's in the name of balancing and harmonizing and becoming healthy, but all of that becomes a little burdensome eventually, the golden chain. But to go from unhealth to so-called present moment before you've become healthy and learned these rules and guidelines, in my opinion, short circuits the process. It's half-baked. You don't have an appropriate working knowledge, and it won't last. You need this groove to kind of fall back on and to be your regular day-to-day. So the concept in Ayurveda is, and just like in the Enneagram where you have a wing, again, watch the videos, you'll know what I mean. In Ayurveda, you have a secondary. Most of the time. Some people are pitta pitta, kapha kapha, vata vata. But then also, most usually, there's kapha pitta or pitta vata or vata pitta, pitta kapha. Kapha vata, I don't know if that's the case, but I'll learn more about it when I do the 2-year school. In any case, the concept is whatever your primary dosha is, you already have an abundant amount of that energy. You already cup almost full to overflowing with kapha, or with earth, with fire, with air. So the invitation is pratipaksha bhavana, even though it doesn't say that. I'm the one, I myself, not to say other people haven't made the connection also, but I made the connection that this is pratipaksha bhavana here. Same as the Enneagram. It doesn't explicitly say that, but that's what it is. To get going in the right direction, you have to cultivate the opposite of your imbalance. So, your cup is almost full to overflowing with your dosha type. Therefore, if you eat something that exacerbates or gives you more of that one, or if you do something in your lifestyle that gives you more of that one or sends it overboard, then it's going to create a reaction of some kind. So pittas, for example, fire, and again, especially if you're also a Sagittarius or whatever the other fire signs are, and especially if on the Enneagram you also can be kind of like too high-strung and too achievement-oriented, fire, 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 go, 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 then quite literally, spicy foods, alcohol, other of these kind of stimulants where you're already stimulated, coffee, will send it overboard. So the invitation, even though at first it doesn't feel, it feels awful. It feels good to be in this kind of mode. For kaphas, it feels good to be lazy. Don't want to do anything. But like I said at the beginning, as you're just starting out, what feels good isn't necessarily good for you. What doesn't feel good might be good for you. It's not 100% like that, but you have to learn to discern. So, and I think you know deep down. You already know. But we've just been covered over and we get, lazy and stuck in our own groove. And for some reason don't want to do what's good for us. I'm actually not speaking for myself because I've been on this path of I want to grow, I want to heal, I want to transform and evolve my whole life. Which in and of itself can become an addiction and a pathology, so I have looked at that over the years as well. Pump the brakes on trying to be on the fast track of growth all the time. Slow it down. You don't always have to be upward trajectory, which paradoxically in and of itself helps me grow more. It's pretty cool. So you eventually get what you want and get what you need, but not in the way you originally thought you wanted or needed it. So the invitation for pittas is to eat cooling foods. Chill out. See, literally, cool down. Invitation for vatas is to eat heavier foods, denser foods. Find a way to connect to the ground, not to be so flighty all the time. Move slower. Collect more things. Don't be so minimal. For example, and so as far as discipline goes, again, if on any of these types or in the Enneagram specifically, you are one that is prone to be too disciplined, then find a way to still stick to these kind of rules and guidelines, but relaxed. If you're a type that tends to not be disciplined, then find a way to really stick to it, to really finish this, to really accomplish it. This is fun. So I'd invite you, along with your homework from last video, of writing down kind of a poor conditioning or a habit or an addiction or an imbalance from each of the kosha layers. Physical, energetic, mental, emotional, spiritual. And then come up with a pratipaksha bhavana scheme to get yourself going in the right direction for yourself. Just with your own intuition. You already know this is bad for you. You already know this causes problems. You already know this brings up suffering. And then, when you feast from feasting or feast from fasting, or do the opposite with each one of those things, I'd like for you to then write in your journal what comes up during that period of time. What comes up as you're shifting on each of those levels as well. What's it feel like physically? What's your energy do? What do your emotions do? What does your mind do? What are your thoughts about it? And what spiritual realizations perhaps come along with that practice? I'd also like for you to study the Enneagram and dabble a bit in Ayurveda and come up with a scheme for pratipaksha bhavana there. Move in the path of integration in Enneagram language. Start to eat foods and live your life in a way that balances out your dosha. So heavier foods, this is just a very broad summary of it. Heavier foods for vata. Get grounded if you're vata. Cooler foods. So we'll say diet, nutrition, as well as lifestyle. Heavier foods for vata, as well as slow down and get grounded. Cooling foods for pitta. And again, reference joyfulbelly.com or talk to John, or eventually have a consultation with me when I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner. But still, for now, I can talk to you about it. I know enough about it to lead you in the right direction. Just not an expert professional just yet. Cooling foods for pitta and chill the fuck out in your lifestyle. Lighter, more stimulating foods for kapha, and get your ass in gear in your lifestyle for kapha. Those are the invitations that I'd like for you to start considering. And start making better lifestyle choices, food choices. Eating organic if you can. Understanding the food, the meat industry, as again, they're putting not good things in our food, which are causing illness. So eating as cleanly, not processed, organic as possible within whatever you're working with. And some diets and nutritions that have like weight loss as a goal. I mean, think about it. For one, if vatas start losing even more weight, they might just fly away. So getting grounded and gaining some weight on days that you're eating might be appropriate. So this is not just about thinner. Like I said, then prana itself fills out your body's shape, size, type, and tone. You become a very natural, balanced, whole version of yourself, mind, body, spirit, etc. So on those systems that are just concerned with weight loss or whatever, and when it's like calorie restriction or something like that, then they give you like a cheat day. Okay, now on one day a week you can eat whatever you want, or you can have that snack. Sure, allow yourself to do that if it fits within like the Father Thomas story from last video. Have the chocolate bar if it's pratipaksha bhavana. And then sometimes, so that you don't just train your system to be overly disciplined all the time, and you can just relax and chill sometimes, to give yourself that treat. But if part of your pathology is always going for the treat, then learn to say no sometimes. Does that make sense? So don't be overly rigid in fasting from feasting or fasting from fasting, especially if being overly rigid is one of your pathologies. But at the same time, stick to it. And yes, see that occasionally a treat is nice, whatever the treat is. Because again, as I told you, one of the 7 practices for nourishment is going to be enjoying yourself, doing something you love to do. That in and of itself is a tool, a technique, a food for sustenance and energy. But again, what you currently think is fun might not be good for you. So maybe even what you think is fun, what you do for fun will eventually change. Or maybe not. Or maybe it's the same thing, but you have a new and different relationship with it. So start to make better choices. We're getting along the way here. Before, I'm going to give some actual suggestions for fasting and for feasting. But for now, in these preliminary support videos, start pratipaksha bhavana, start journaling, look into the Enneagram, look into Ayurveda, make better choices in food and lifestyle that get the train going in the right direction. And then we'll talk later on down the road about the one-to-one source connection where you don't need these practices, and the direct intuitive guidance when you don't have to follow these guidelines all the time. For now, I'm going to start introducing those practices, and I want to start talking about these systems that have rules and guidelines to get you in the direction of health and balance. One-to-one connection with source, one-to-one direct intuitive guidance, that's later. First, focus on these. So your homework is write down a list, however many you want. Habits, poor conditioning, shadow, ego, fear, on physical, mental, emotional, energetic, spiritual, and then what comes, and then pratipaksha bhavana for each one of those. And then what comes up in each one of those as you do each one of those. You can kind of spider web it out as much as you like. Then get into Enneagram, get into Ayurveda. Start making better choices. Start understanding how your type makes decisions. And get in touch with that center, head, heart, or gut. Make your decisions from there. That's one of the first actually good ways to get in touch with your intuitive guidance, because that's your built-in communication system, but it's still within that system that eventually might become a burden. Some people can go the rest of their life and just follow those systems. But what I teach is eventually present moment intuitive guidance, which the listening aspect of that, the obedience aspect of that, can begin in listening to your head, heart, or gut, depending on your dosha, or depending on your Enneagram type. Listening to your body, truly listening to your body, not your ego, not conditioning. When you eat something, how does it make you feel really after the taste buds have had their little firework moment? How does it really make me feel? Because we all know that temporary satisfaction is fleeting and not good for you anyway. Just like the temporary neck pop. It'll eventually backfire. So this is an amazing, rich discussion, journey, process, conversation that fits into the larger umbrella of the work that I teach. It's not just about eating and not eating. So get going on all of that. And coming up soon is going to be probably more talk about the koshas and starting to introduce you into the practices, a little more intellectual, cognitive support, to get you going, and then when the time is right for each individual person, some suggestions for experimenting with fasting preliminarily and different options for eating. Also, what to do when you're not eating. Thanks for being on this ride with me. Keep up the good work. Namaste.